Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we are going to be talking about characters. We are entering week 0, as I like to call it, of draft 2 of Secret of Shadow, which is super exciting. Basically what that means is my world building is like at 90%, my characters are at 90%, my plot is at 90%, outlining at 90%. Everything's like almost done. It just needs to be finalized, and my outline is really close. But once I bring in my outline to a really solid point, everything else will basically fall into place. So I'm super excited about that. Character is sort of the last thing that I'm going to be touching on about that, because I think I have a little bit of a different way of going about things, but in no way am I an expert. This is more of an experimentation of seeing how writing a book in 6 months goes. So if you like this journey, be sure to like and subscribe and follow along with me. I have a few videos already up about world building, plot, what I did for those, and now we're on week 0 of preparing for my book. Probably next week I'll be talking about how I fit everything into all these different weeks to and then make my story, and then the week after that I'll talk about how my writing went. But today we're going to focus mainly on character. So for me, character is a very interesting thing. Brandon talks a lot in his lectures about how plot, character, and world building are all glued together by conflict. But when I do my outlining, I keep all of that in mind, of course, but figure out my book before I like fully flesh out my characters, if that makes sense. This could be my downfall, but what I do is like I know everything that I sort of want to happen, and I quickly get that all down on paper. Like I can finish a book outline in like an hour basically, but it's crap. So what I do is I have to keep going back, and I have to look at places where I know conflict could be even better, and I try to increase things. It's not always about increasing the stakes, but it's about increasing what kind of tension is going on right now. And definitely having your characters' information and knowing the kind of people they are will definitely help. I started out with only really getting in depth with my character when it came to my 2 main characters, but I run most of it off of instinct of how I think the drama should play out. Brandon does a lot of this as well. I don't go to the extent that he does, but he'll end up actually writing a few sort of sample chapters and seeing how the character feels and whether they're right for the story. For me, I already know my main sort of character motives for why the story is sort of happening, and then I will go into further detail. So how I do that is I actually use the 16 personality type of thing. So I take a quiz and on the 16 personalities, and then my character will come up from there. And I do that, like I said before, is I just look at my character's motives, why they believe what they believe, and their sort of headcanon in my head, their backstory. I don't always have to write it down, but I know the background that they come from and why they believe and do what they do, and sort of their circumstances of why they think and believe why they do now. Like that's essentially it. And then I take that, I write that all down on, I take like the personality they type. So if they're like an INFP, they're like an introvert, more of a feeling type of person, I will write just the main sort of details of that sort of personality type. I'll also write their motives and their goals and why they believe what they believe and their motive. I'll then go into what is their sort of occupation before the story started, and I like to use that as like how they view the world. A carpenter views the world very differently from a sailor. So I like to be able to have that sort of thing down, and then I like to have like a quirk or something that the person does that's ever so slight but is a tell of who that person is. And I really like this sort of process because it really gets me in the head of that person. Now, I don't use any of that information for real during my outlining phase. I use all of this information when those characters are on screen, if that makes sense, or if I'm in more of their viewpoint. So whenever I'm doing interactions, I'll be like, okay, I have these 6 people in the room. Who's the dominant sort of person in the room? Okay, who's going to be talking more of the dominant person? Who is not going to be involved in much of the conversation? Probably the introvert. But what are there certain tells when they do talk about that tells tells us more about them, because I don't want to go into my descriptions and be like, well, he was a sailor for 20 years and here's what he thought about this. No, I just want to, in the way that they speak, act, and do what they do, I want it to come across in a way that you'll be able to tell. Doesn't mean that I never am like, oh yeah, he was a sailor and now he's a part of this like thieving crew, whatever. Yeah, so that's essentially how I do it. When I build my characters, I take them from a personality test and I break down their sort of wants and their needs from there, and the things that they're missing, and where other people can come in or where they can figure it out and fill that sort of gap of their wants and their needs. But not always that all connects and makes sense all together. Like, I'll take my main character, for example. Cell's sort of main drive is he wants to go visit his homeland because he's tired of being treated like dirt in this foreign country. But really, he just needs to like feel accepted. Like, that's like the full thing. And that all stems from his father not really being around earlier on in his life, and now that his dad is around, he's more demanding and on what Cell needs to accomplish before he can go to his homeland. And it's all of this sort of stuff. Like, the homeland thing isn't necessarily because of his dad. The homeland is because he wants to go to his homeland and not feel like a foreigner in this in this country. But his need stems from his relationship with his dad and not necessarily feeling fully good enough or accepted. And he's trying to bash against that sort of idea. And his father never meant for him to really feel that way. And that's the thing when I go into, and then Devrin's sort of point of view, Devrin never wanted Cell to feel that way. Devrin has his own sort of motives going on in the background that we don't really figure out for the first half of the book. It's only until the latter half that we figure out about what Devrin's sort of thing is. That is a bit of a spoiler, but if you're here, you only really care about sort of the storytelling, not necessarily the book. But that's all I'll give for that information. But yeah, so it's not always just like it has to be super interwoven, connected with all of these things. It's good for all of it to really make sense, if that makes sense. But it's not necessary. It doesn't all have to be like super meshed together. So yeah, I have that. I take the personality test, then I list out their sort of flaws that stem from there. I give them their wants, their needs, their mask that they put on in front of people, and then against who they actually really are. And this is all different for everybody. So there's some people that are just like fully them when you first meet them, and that's nothing else, but some people have things to hide, right? Their goals, their motives, their flaws, and then what they need from the story and what they're going to get out of it, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And I do all of this to be like, okay, yeah, this is cool. I need to be able to write them very well when I'm in their head. That doesn't necessarily tie into what I do with my outlining. Like, it's like, how do I build my character while I don't even have it built yet when it comes to my outline? Well, like I said, I have their motives. So Cell has 2 to 3 main plot lines that I have in this book that need satisfying arcs, and I don't necessarily need all of that information of his personality type to be able to write this outline. I just need to know I need to make a satisfying arc for the father-son relationship, his main goal of wanting to go to his home country, and third, finding this sort of mentor figure that fills this father place, but won't exactly be enough to fulfill it, but he will find purpose within this mentor figure. So I'm juggling all 3 of these things, and I can have the certain outcomes happen the way that they do and fulfill the arcs that I want, and not necessarily need to know that he's like an ENFJ or something like that. Of course, that stuff could help with anybody, but like I said, this is my sort of personal process of what I'm going through now, and this could totally change the second book that I do, which will be I will start probably writing that by the end of July, which I'm really excited about. I've already started outlining a little bit on that one, but try not to get distracted and just focus on writing this one. But I will be spending the next 16 weeks writing this book. Next week, I'll give you sort of a rundown of how everything's looking, how I finished up and wrapped up everything. I'm supposed to be having a sort of like get together with my dad on the outline of this book and what he thinks. He's a huge consumer of media and books, and he doesn't necessarily come from that writing community, but he has a really good eye for story. So really excited to go through that with him and see what we can add, change, whatever, anything like that. So excited to bring that to you guys. If this was helpful, let me know. I know I don't really have a lot on character. It's more of instinct and intuition for me. I've been doing some storytelling stuff for a while, but the big thing you want to focus on is just having a very satisfying story arc for your character. And if you go back to my outlining sort of video, I talk about all of that. It's one of the first few videos. And as long as I have this good sort of story arc going on in the background, I can sort of placate my character to mold into that, or to subvert some expectations wherever I put that in my outlining. So hope that was helpful, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Next week I will be talking about how the outline is all fully come together and I've started writing. So excited to bring that to you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video.